Okay, we're right at 6:30, so we'll get started. Firstly, I want to welcome everybody, and on behalf of Community Board 8 and the Streetlight Committee, say a very happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to the Streetlight Committee of Community Board 8. My name is Abraham Salcido. I chair this committee. A few rules of the road for today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call on the applicants in order as listed on the agenda, and have them and/or their representative state their name and give us a bit of an overview of the application. I will then invite any members of the public who have questions or comments on the application, the time to an opportunity to speak. And then I will go to any of my esteemed committee members for any questions or comments or motions. We'll take those in order. Any action taken here will then be forwarded on to and voted on by the full board at the January 18th Wednesday meeting. Another couple more rules of the road. Reminder, please direct all questions, comments towards me as the chair. I'd like to limit and avoid any crosstalk between applicants and questioners. As always, let's please be mindful and respectful of everyone's opinion and operate with a level of decorum. If anyone's not able to do that, then they will lose their opportunity to speak any further. And with that, I think I'll hand it over to Robert for the technical rules of the road.
Thank you, Abraham. Welcome. If this is your first time joining us, everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except the committee chair, Abraham, and the presenters. Following the presentation, Abraham will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon, pressing raise hand, not the wave or the thumbs up. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're on the phone, it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the chair calls on you. The chat is for technical support only, to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of Abraham or any other committee members. They will not see these chats. If you have an older version of Zoom, you will need to go to the participants section where you'll find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support.
Great, thank you, Robert. Okay, I'm going to first just make sure I have the right tally for committee members. I know a few have just joined. So on my list, I have Barbara, Bill, Evan, Lindsay, Marco, Ms. Brown, Robin, Russell. Addison, I also see Kaz, and I think I saw Judy and Judy. Am I missing anyone?
Not by my count, Abraham, no.
Okay, good. Okay, so by my count, that's 12 of us. Okay, good. If I notice anyone else, hopefully they'll make themselves known or keep an eye out for me, Robert, and we can keep updating as we go down the agenda. All right, great. So with that in mind, let's start with item 1A. Do I have the representative for A. Shapiro on behalf of entity 174 East 82nd? This is a new application for a temporary retail permit for liquor, wine, beer, and cider.
Abraham, I just want to make sure that we also got Mrs. Brown.
Yes, I have Mrs. Brown.
Okay, gotcha. And then I see A. Shapiro here. I'm going to go ahead and unmute.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Do you want me to just talk or do you have any questions?
Yes, please. Please
Okay.
start, jump right in, tell us your name and a little bit about the application and we'll go from there.
Wonderful. I'm Alexandra Shapiro. I'm the owner of Flex Muscles. We just moved around the corner, and in our old location, we will now be opening a new concept. We're doing kind of just a quick story. Right after we had a fire at the old Flex on 82nd Street, I was looking online on Etsy for old New York restaurant memorabilia, and I came across a matchbook from my father's first restaurant that was opened on 82nd and 3rd in 1977.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was, I've kind of made it my life's mission to find old relics from his projects in the past, and I've really never found anything, and this felt really meant to be. The restaurant's name was Hexter's, and we will be bringing Hexter's back. A real old New York, neighborhood place, the kind of place you can sit at the bar and have a great martini and a shrimp cocktail and a burger, but also have like a really delicious steak in the back. Really beautiful design, really classy, but approachable, just a great place for the neighborhood.
Wonderful. And so a couple of questions we usually like is hours of operation. Let's see. I have you guys listed as 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. Sunday through Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
We'll most likely begin brunch eventually, but
okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Food drink ratio, 70% food, 30% drink. Great. Is there going to be any outdoor space?
I mean, obviously that depends on what happens with the laws. I know they're really in flux right now. If we're allowed to, absolutely, we would like to put some outdoor seating in front. Right now, and our current capability is about 4 tables right under our awning. That's in our building's line, so we don't even need a permit for it.
Got it. Okay. And there's no like rear outdoor space.
No.
Good. And the establishment is ADA compliant?
It will be entirely ADA compliant.
Okay, great. Okay, I think that's all for me. I'm going to go to first inquire if there's any members of the public on this item. So if anyone from the public has a question on this application, please give me an indication by raising your hand. If not, then I will go to my committee members. One more second, starting with Mrs. Brown and then Cause.
Thank you, Chair Salito. And thank you, Ms. Shapiro. I'm really excited about your opportunity to open up this restaurant. I need clarification. You said it's almost compliant. What does that
No,
mean?
I said it will be compliant.
Yes,
So right now we have an alleyway that is technically ADA compliant, but it's not a really nice entry. So we'll be making it nice and proper door handles. We're also putting in an ADA compliant restroom.
Okay. Well, then I can support this application with the stipulation that it be ADA compliant prior
It
to.
already is in the works.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cause?
Yeah, you mentioned the alleyway. Is that the entry from the street?
So we have an entrance right now that is below, it's 3 steps down. So the front entrance is not ADA compliant. We had tried to pitch the stairs differently and create a ramp. However, the accessibility with the sidewalk made it impossible. So we have a side entrance that lets us right into the space, and we've used in the past for patrons in wheelchairs, but we're just going to be making it more of an official side entrance so that it's entirely ADA compliant.
But when Bayaloo was there, wasn't it ADA compliant?
Oh no, I moved around the corner to the Bayoglu space. That's our new restaurant. That is completely ADA.
Oh, okay.
This
Okay,
is in our
I'm
old
sorry.
space. No, that's okay. This is in our old space on 82nd between 3rd and Lex.
Oh, so you're going back to there also?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's it. And you've got no outdoor space?
We have nothing in the back. Again, we have 4 tables that we've always had out there under our awning.
Right.
Nothing else. Again, if they continue to allow outdoor dining, we'll absolutely be applying for that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
So do you have any inside information on what's going on?
Do I, I don't really. I think that they're going to get rid of the street. I don't know what they're called. The street dining, the permanent street.
Wow.
I think that that's got to go. I just think it's causing too much, vermin problems and parking issues. But I would be surprised if they didn't come up with something that was permanent, whether it be sidewalk dining or closing off streets. I really do think they're going to come up with something permanent.
Well, that's not our problem at the moment. So thank you very much. Good luck.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Cause. Next I have Judy and then Barbara.
I move to approve.
Great.
Thank you.
Do I have a yep, I see thumbs up for a second. Wonderful. Okay, does anyone call the question? Does anyone oppose calling the question? Okay, assume no. So let's put all hands down and I'm going to go to the roll. So this is a motion to approve. Again, with the stipulation that it will be ADA compliant, which is already in the works, so not a problem. Okay, this is a motion to approve. If you're voting no, not voting for cause or abstaining, give me some indication. Otherwise, you will go down as a yes. Barbara, is your hand up from previously or? Okay, yeah, okay, so you're a yes. Okay, good. All right, so last chance. Otherwise, everyone is going down as a yes. So this is going to go as a unanimous 12-0 approval. Thank you very much. Good luck, and we look forward to
Thank
this
you
adventure.
so much. Thank you. Can't wait to have you all in.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Okay, bye-bye. Happy New Year, everyone.
Likewise. Okay, great. Now moving along to category 2. These are change applications. Do I have the representative for item 2A, Origine LLC DBA JoJo? This is a change application for liquor, wine, beer, and cider. Martin? Oh, Jeremy?
Hello, I think
Hi.
Martin, hi everyone, good evening everyone. I think Martin is unmuting himself now. Not sure if we're able to.
I'm sorry, all right, I'm being old and not being with these this new stuff, I'm sorry for it.
Okay, great.
Late,
So,
but in
please
any
introduce
event,
yourselves and tell
yes.
us a little bit about the application and the nature of the change.
Yes, my name is Martin Miller, I'm an attorney and I represent Origine LLC, which does business as JoJo. JoJo has been a restaurant that's been at the same location for approximately 30 years, if not longer. What the application is all about is what's known as a corporate change. The owner-operator of the restaurant is Jean-Georges Van Geranten, Jean-Georges. Nothing is changing. The hours will be exactly the same. It'll be 5 to 10, Monday to Friday, Saturday 12 to 10, Sunday 12 to 10. But what is being done is Jean-Georges is rearranging his corporate structure. And I gave you a diagram of what the corporate structure will be at the end of the day. The point being that Jean-Georges was in charge yesterday, Jean-Georges is in charge today, and Jean-Georges will be in charge tomorrow. Staff will be the same, everything will be the same. That is the purpose of this application.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So everything else will be the same. That's the only just restructuring change. Great.
That's
Okay.
right.
So with that, I will go to members of the public. If there's any member of the public that has a question, comment on this application, please raise your hand or give me an indication. Okay, I see. Good. I see a couple of members of the public. I'm going to go with Kenneth Lobb, and I apologize in advance if I pronounce anybody's name. Kenneth.
So just a reminder for Ken on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and
Hi.
*6 to unmute.
I thought I did it correctly. Can you hear my voice?
We can now. Hi, Kenneth.
Very good. Thank you. My name is Kenneth Laub. I've resided for 36 years on 64th Street between 3rd and Lexington, actually directly opposite JoJo's restaurant, which is obviously at 160 East 64th. Throughout the years, it has been a difficult, if not strained, relationship between JoJo's and its residential neighbors, as well as the association on the street. But recently, matters have become so difficult and unpleasant that I felt compelled to bring this to the attention of Community Board 8 and the Department of Transportation. You all know about 18 months ago, the city permitted sheds to be erected by restaurants to hopefully improve their business. JoJo's not only built a shed larger than was permitted, but also placed tables on the sidewalk in front of their neighbor at 162 East 64th Street and allowed outdoor and day and night dining. The DOT issued violations. JoJo's was advised to reduce the size of their shed and enclose it. They failed repeatedly to enclose the shed in violation of the DOT order. That was several months ago. JoJo's does not use this facility and has not used it for several months. But by ignoring the violation, they've created a condition that has lowered the quality of life on our block by permitting homeless people to nightly sleep and even cook in this shed. Since the shed is open to anyone and provides electricity, it has essentially made itself attractive for homeless people to essentially reside there. What is worse is that they've been seen urinating and defecating in adjacent properties. The owners of our block would hope that the owner of 160 64th Street JoJo's restaurant would immediately and even voluntarily agree to remove this shed, which would eliminate the homeless issue and also allow for their garbage to be picked up on their sidewalk rather than placed on the street. That would additionally help with the rat issue. I have provided pictures to this committee, and I'm sure you will find these pictures support my statements. You may know we received kind of short notice for this hearing, and many of our residents are away and not expected back for another week. However, I know from speaking with others that they support my position and would be willing to sign a petition in support of same. I also speak for many in requesting that the ownership of 160 and JoJo's immediately remove their shed and show appropriately neighborly sensitivity to the condition they have created, which is just not acceptable for residents of our street. Finally, it is apparent the various city agencies are impacted by JoJo's behavior, especially DOT and parks. But the residents of our street are the most impacted. And I'm very concerned that there will be a great distance between a promise to take the shed down and awaiting for City Council to determine new standards for outdoor dining. That could take months, and in the interim, we will need to put up with this horrible situation. I recognize the community boards have an advisory role as it relates to liquor license renewals. I would ask in this particular situation that they consider the impact to our street by allowing this to continue. I would hope they would make accordingly the right recommendation under the circumstances, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Jeremy or Martin, do you want to comment?
Yeah, let me comment first, and then I'll Jeremy Moustakis, who's the general manager of the premises, will address this on a more exact manner. But be advised, number one, that this is a corporate change application. There's been no request to have anything changed other than the structure of the corporation. That being said, I was telephoned this afternoon about this situation with the shed, and I immediately called Jeremy, and he explained to me how over a period of time now, 2-3 months, they've called 311. They have requested that this be eradicated, that the police have even been called in, and that in an attempt to finally do away with that problem, a permanent gate will be erected around the premises, a steel gate, which will be locked and will not permit anyone to go inside that shed. If you need more of an elaboration, Jeremy Moustakis, who I said is the general manager, can elaborate as to what is being done. But we want to be good neighbors. We don't stay out late. We don't play loud music. We don't do anything except serve excellent food when the premises is open. But I would like Jeremy to just elaborate on what I've just said.
Sure. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Jeremy, and I've got the pleasure of representing JoJo here on this call. I think for anyone who's lived in the neighborhood and for anyone who's been a New Yorker for the last 30 years, JoJo has been an institution only because of the incredible community that it's a part of. And so I thank everyone for their time tonight, and Kenneth for your feedback. I want to just share briefly the dining shed that exists outside is presently DOT compliant. It has been inspected, and we know that right now those laws are in flux. So if there are some changes to the parameters for those dining sheds, we will continue to comply and meet the standards required. The situation, unfortunately, for those who are unaware, in the dining shed is a couple of months ago, perhaps 3 or 4 months ago, we were first notified by one of our neighbors that there was a homeless man sleeping in the outdoor shed. Obviously, this is concerning for a number of reasons, but it was then brought to our attention that the individual was perhaps cooking in the shed or using some sort of a cooking device or open flame. After reporting him to the Department of Homeless Services, NYPD officers would arrive typically within 4 hours to remove him. I'm not being coy, but the individual is quite clever. Within that 4-hour time period, he would have his belongings packed up, and usually was gone before 11 a.m. Our teams typically arrive early in the morning and would call right away. There were a few times where the Department of Homeless Services was actually, he was there when they arrived. And once he's removed, he's offered assistance. Typically, he would decline the service. Perhaps he'd be brought to the shelter and later released, but he would find his way back to JoJo. Over the last few months, and DHS can confirm this, we filed over 15 complaints. We would report encampment to see if this would amplify the response from officers as we were advised to, which it did not. We would report trespassing, but then we were told that the outdoor dining spaces are not private property and are not considered and are considered city property. This, along with other things and the murky nature that is law around these sheds, has made this complicated. I'll share that, as with any of us on this call, we take safety of our neighbors, of our environment very seriously. And at no point did we recognize him creating a hazard except for potentially cooking. So we've been respectful of the individual in all the ways that one should be, but the situation clearly is untenable. We have purchased, along with the contractor, steel gates, scissor gates, if that reference makes sense for everyone, that will be installed on Thursday of this week. They'll run from end to end on either side of the shed. As Kenneth pointed out, we haven't used it for a few months. It's cold out, and thankfully, knock on wood, our guests are willing to dine inside, so we don't intend to use it again until early spring. But those gates will remain locked. They're only going to be open so that we can clean the shed if there's any debris or any leaves or any materials that end up in the space itself, and they will be locked otherwise at all times. So this is something that we've attempted to remedy through the Department of Homeless Services and with the support of the NYPD. It has been unsuccessful. And so we will be installing a gate that keeps the area completely free of access throughout the evening. And I'd just like to point out, as Kenneth mentioned, some of the debris that had accumulated along the side, the retail space just next door to ours, unfortunately, has not been rented for some time. Garbage does collect there. We have a new management team at the restaurant. We instruct them to treat the sidewalk like it's their own, even if it's not in front of the store. And so our teams are going out there and cleaning or power washing the sidewalk every month when it's warm enough to do so, and being especially mindful of the debris that might accumulate there. As JoJo has been a fixture of the neighborhood for a long time. We have great respect, reverence for the community that we're in, and for the integrity of what it's like to live there. So we're open to all feedback and want to continue to be great neighbors to our community and to the block itself.
Thank you, Jeremy. Kenneth, any thoughts on that proposal for the gate?
I would hope that they wouldn't, I would hope they would take down the shed. Period.
Okay. Thank you very much. With that, I see Anson Beard had his hand up, member of the public.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Anson Beard. I live at 176 East 64th Street, right down the street from JoJo. I do concur, Jeremy, that JoJo is a terrific fixture of the neighborhood and has been so for 30 years. Obviously, exceptional high-end dining restaurant and a very well-known location in New York. But I do agree with Ken Laub, who lives across the street from me, that there has been a noticeable deterioration on the quality of the street, in large part because of those dining sheds. So I am not familiar with the current law with respect to those sheds, but I did want to join this call because I can attest to the fact that there is a homeless gentleman living in there from time to time, making use of the electricity. I have seen urine, human defecation in that shed. The shed always has garbage on either side of it, including before I came back to work tonight to take this call. There is electricity in the shed, as you're aware, and I think I agree with Ken. I'm a little disappointed to hear that the solution now, as we go into the winter, is to put on a temporary gate, because my gut is that's probably going to be pretty unattractive also. And we'll see if it works in keeping people out of the shed. But I guess maybe you could let us know what the current law is. It seems to me, I mean, is the intention to keep that shed up in perpetuity, or are you going to take it down at some point in the future? Because I don't see how it adds to the attraction of JoJo in general. I understand obviously the hit that restaurateurs took during COVID, and I'm certainly empathetic to that, and I'm empathetic to the plight of the homeless. But I also do live on that block, and looking at rats and garbage and human excrement, and people living there when I'm going to work in the morning, I'm not a fan of either. Obviously, to state the obvious. So I'd like to know what the current law is and how long these sheds are going to remain on these streets. Thank you.
You want us to
speak
answer?
to your intention as to kind of the longevity or view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What I would, and thank you so much for sharing that feedback. I'd share a couple of points. One, that the shed itself is compliant with, as I think all of us are aware, the speed at which the dining sheds became released as a program for New York City was quite rapid, and we're grateful for it. And whereas our business levels at JoJo have not found their way yet to where they were before the pandemic, a lot of well-intentioned programs like these sheds have been a great support. We do expect the regulation to change around these sheds, and gosh, hopefully we can stop calling them sheds, because that's a bit of a problem in and of itself. But they are, in fact, something that we hope to be able to use if we're able to meet the requirements as set forth by the Department of Transportation. As it stands now, we're able to achieve that with the shed the way it's presently constituted. The gates, which are steel scissor gates, are quite attractive for what it's worth, look very clean and precise. And as with that shed, I think compared to some of the others, we would demonstrate, I think, pretty quickly that it is meant to align with the overall aesthetic of JoJo, of the block, and something that we feel our guests can enjoy exceptional food and beverage in the company of. Those gates, though, would not be temporary. What we've learned is that whatever iteration exists of our outdoor dining, if there is a semi-enclosed structure, we must be able to lock it at night, every night, and we must be able to lock it when it's not in use, because before we went through the process of notifying Department of Homeless Services and the NYPD of the situation we had in the shed, we attempted to ask the individual not to come back. And what we found is quite clever. They learned our hours of operation. They know when we're there. They arrived just after our teams finish up for the night and would leave in many cases just after our teams arrived. So we know that, unfortunately, this isn't something that we can leave to chance. When we're not operating the shed, it must be locked. It must be inaccessible to anyone in the public, completely and fully, without question. It is the only way to eliminate the activity. And unfortunately, a lot of the activity that has been shared, the feedback that's unacceptable, whether it's urinating or defecating in that area, it is unfortunately connected to the root cause of having someone suffering from homelessness occupying that shed. Provided they are venturing into that shed every night, those problems will persist. We have a 3-month body of work that really tells us that. And although we would like to think, we can resolve the issue without locking it out to the public, we won't wait for that reality any longer. So in whatever capacity an outdoor dining shed exists, we will make sure that going forward, it can be locked or closed off when it's not in operation, to solve that issue once and for all.
All right, thank you, Jeremy. Martin, anything from you?
No, he covered it very well. It's just that what was stated both by Jeremy and others, the reality is that still, even though some think COVID is over, it is not. And in order to survive in these places, state and the city have drawn these provisions to allow restaurateurs to try to recoup losses that were unsustainable for over 2 years. JoJo, as Jeremy just stated, is taking great pride in trying to be a good neighbor, is not looking to create a problem with the people on the block. It is taking whatever steps it can take, and this steel gate will hopefully dissuade this homeless person or any other homeless person from trying to get in. He will not be able to get in. And as such, the thought is that hopefully the problem will go away, at least from JoJo. It was also stated that these things exist all over the city, and they do. And we're trying, or JoJo is trying, to get ahead of the curve, so to speak, by implementing these gates and making sure that those that have any desire to want to go in there will not be able to.
Great. Thank you very much. I see another member of the public, so I will go to Susan and Joel Mindell before going to my committee members.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm Joel Mindell, and I live on East 64th Street, across from JoJo's, and my wife and I are co-presidents of our street association. And I want to second everything that Ken Laub said earlier. And I find it ingenuous that after 3 months of knowing this is happening, that this Thursday, JoJo's is putting up gates. The other sheds in our neighborhood, or at least within the next block or so of us, have all put up gates before this. And it just so happens that JoJo's decided to do this this week, which is the same time that it's coming before this committee. I would hope that at the minimum, the community board would table this until they have proof that JoJo is doing what it says it is going to do and has not yet done for a long period of time.
Thank you very much. Okay, one more call for any other members of the public. If not, then I will go to Mrs. Brown first.
Thank you, Chair Solito. To me, that this appears to be a health and safety issue and being a good neighbor. And I can appreciate the fact that the shed will generate revenue, but we have to think about the health and safety of the neighborhood and the neighbors. And this seems to be a real problem. Has JoJo sat down with Mr. Lobb and other tenant or resident associations regarding the problem and how to resolve the problem? Jeremy keeps referring to this homeless person as being clever. Can he be able to access the gate since he's so clever? I mean, the gate doesn't really appear to be a solution to me. And so why not temporarily remove the shed until you can come to some type of compromise? Are you open to that? Is JoJo open to that?
With all due respect, I just heard comments that there are gates on other structures, and it seems to be doing the job. In terms of just sitting idly by, I would take exception to that too. JoJo attempted to comply within the law by having 311 calls placed to the homeless agency, and they could do nothing. They've had meetings with the police, and they could do nothing. And it's not as if we just put a gate up last night. It takes a while to have someone come in to measure it, to do what has to be done. So it's not as if we were sitting idly by all this time. We were trying to use the powers that be, so to speak, to help us with the problem. When we realized that was not doing the trick, we took the action that's necessary to ensure that this homeless person doesn't get back inside that shed.
But have you taken the time to sit down and talk to Mr. Lobb and other resident leaders about the problem, solutions, compromise?
Jeremy, you want to take that one?
Sure, and thank you, Mrs. Brown. You know, we generally receive, I think, because of the sort of folks know the name John George. So what has been historically the case is we've received feedback actually not directly at the restaurant, though in some cases, some of our neighbors have stopped by, but they'll call our corporate office. In fact, there was a correspondence from a gentleman last week, actually, and again this week he checked back in. And anytime feedback is sent our way, we react and respond right away. Would be happy to sit down with any of our neighbors and learn what they know about what happens on the street when perhaps we're not operating. We're not open for breakfast. We haven't been open on Mondays and Tuesdays for a long while, which is a shame, but we haven't been. And so what we recognized in the last month is really when we leave the restaurant Sunday evening, perhaps things are happening when we're not there, and that's been problematic. We will be returning to our 7 days of operation here, and that's going to give us the ability to manage everything that happens in front of JoJo in terms of cleanliness and as it relates to health and safety. And I think as many have pointed out here tonight, the root cause that we know of any concern related to health and safety here is the unfortunate situation of someone suffering from homelessness occupying that shed when we are not there. And I share clever because they're not doing it when we are there. So they know that that they've got to sort of wait until we're not present. Some of our staff has said they've seen this individual, in other sheds and and locally around the area. So they know the individual tends to stay located pretty close to JoJo, and perhaps some of our neighbors on this call could validate that. But as many of, sorry, go ahead, Mrs. Brown.
Well, it sounds like that would be a solution, you being there 7 days a week or more often. And I understand you're here tonight to ask for a corporate change. And that's why we're here. But I was hoping that we would work out something with Mr. Laub and the other resident associations so that we can go forward. But I think part of the solution is being more present, more available. And you stated that you would be there 7 days a week. So in regard to that, I can support the corporate change with the understanding that you will be working with the neighbors to resolve this issue, as well as our council members. All right, thank you for your time.
Jeremy, can I also add to that?
Please.
You mentioned to me earlier that you're willing to give your own number out so that anybody who has a problem, instead of going through corporate, as you put it, or going to you directly and getting feedback immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. We've said a few times here, JoJo been around for 30 years and gosh, I hope, each day we're making choices that help us stay here for another 30. And so, being closely connected to our community, to our neighbors, and being able to receive feedback in real time is really important for us and an important investment in our community. So absolutely.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate. So I'm taking that as a yes on that contact info, correct?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Okay, next I will go to Cause.
Yeah, thanks, Abraham. We all know that the city agencies have done absolutely nothing over the past 3 years as far as the outdoor dining. Why do you have electric supply 24/7 out there?
Sure. The electrical receptacle that's there is for heating components. So
but
that
you could have a switch or circuit breaker inside to turn it off when you're not there. Wouldn't that help?
It would, and I think it's a really good point. I'm not sure it's something that we've looked into, and I'd be happy to. This gate should resolve the problem of anyone trying to use that receptacle. But I think you bring up a very good point, and if there's any way for us to directly shut off the electric to the shed when it's not being used, it makes nothing but good sense for us to do that. So we would absolutely.
I assume the shed is fully enclosed. It's got sides and roof and everything.
It's enclosed on 3 sides, and then.
And what about the roof? What about the top?
Sorry, the roof. Yes, yes, and there's a roof as well.
But when you received, when you applied for the DOT, you got guidelines on the outdoor dining, did you not?
Correct. Yes, we did.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the DOT guidelines were no structure or nothing above 3'6" above the ground, 3 sides, 18 inches wide, no top, no sides. Correct? That was the drawing I saw 3 years ago.
I believe that's changed a few times since. Perhaps that was the original guidance. The structure at JoJo was not built immediately after the first set of guidance was created.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a bit of a rolling process to learn. One of the issues that we've learned in other situations are manhole covers, not something that was referenced in the original guidance,
Mhm.
but was updated, right? Of course, Con Edison and other agencies need access. So we've continued to and will continue to comply with all regulation, be it through Department of Transportation or any other agency that sets forth those guidelines. And one positive in terms of Department of Transportation is that they have begun to recirculate a bit more throughout the city and check in with business operations to validate that sheds are compliant and are built to spec. But in terms of the height requirements, the structural requirements, all of those are to the very best of our understanding currently in compliance.
So good luck with the rolling rules and no regulations.
We hope that it becomes much clearer. As frustrating as it can be to live on a street, and let's be honest, we've seen some sheds. I don't want to over communicate the point, but we've seen some sheds that are not well maintained, that look like they could fall down, and that's scary, certainly. Ours is not that, but what is difficult for all of you and is difficult for us is to understand with clarity what is expected of us. It strikes us as a bit late that we don't have that guidance yet,
right.
But I'm very hopeful, as I think all of us are, that we'll have much clearer guidelines going forward, and clearer pathways for residents, locals, neighbors to communicate with agencies when they think something's not right. It should be an open process. There should be no confusion. So we remain hopeful.
Do you have anything on the sidewalk?
We have a couple of patio tables that are just in front of the storefront itself. They're decorative.
But no enclosures.
No,
Okay.
we don't.
Okay, thank you.
So I've just been reviewing kind of the open restaurant guidelines by the DOT, and it does reference having some requirements for having a temporary fixed cover if certain requirements are met. So it does contemplate that. If it's a 3-side wall or more, then it limits the occupancy to be not exceed the indoor dining capacity. So I can appreciate things may have changed as well as our understanding. But thank you, Cause. Next, I will go to Marco.
Thank you, Abraham. Let me start saying one thing. It's true. The attorney, he said that he's coming for the change of corporation. Absolutely, you're right. But we are a community that we try to evaluate everything in the process. And if it's minor, usually I don't see a let it pass. But in this case, there is a big deterioration of the quality of life of the neighborhood. They're reducing dramatically, using the public space as biological needs, and it's absolutely unacceptable. And we cannot be blind of that position. We have to be very strong in that position. I'm sorry to go in that direction. Now, with respect with DOT create this mess. And DOT is responsible for what's going on right now. There is no enforcement agent that actually help us in both directions, to help the restaurants and to help the community. Because right now, DOT, they don't show up. The regulation, nobody obeys, including yourself, by the way. The way that Cos described, that's in the way that has to be built, all the structures. And if you want to have even more guidance, you can go to the DOT, and it's right there with graphics. They explain everything what you had to do. To put a gate is illegal. It is a solution, but at the same time, it's illegal. That doesn't recommend that, because the main issue is to have an open space, ventilated in all sides. This is what the meaning of the sheds. Allow the ventilation, because COVID developed in enclosed spaces. And nobody complained, by the way, not only you, nobody complains. And that is wrong. That is not your fault. That is DOT fault. And that is wrong completely. And I think it made me feel a little bit very uncomfortable to support in any direction. Let me explain. Look, not only that, the problems of these sheds are poorly built, all of them, no exception. New York City is supposed to have a hurricane type 1. That means winds of 95 to 105 miles per hour. This structure is not going to hold, and it will be flying all over the place. So we become an unresilient city, and that is wrong. And to hear also that your restaurant doesn't open 2 days made me think that you're doing very well in business, because those businesses that close, that means they have good income. Otherwise, they should be working every single day. So that means I think it's enough to have the space, the enclosed space, the rented space, and to use the outside. I think it's wrong. You should consider to remove, even though that's legal, by the way. DOT legalized that, and I don't think the situation is going to improve. The more service that you provide inside, the more comfortability offered to the homeless. And this is a big problem, not only for you, for the entire city. And I think in this case, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say no to this application. I shouldn't say that, but my perception is we have to do something. We cannot tolerate all these biological needs on the streets. It has to stop. And I'm sorry that you are the first one, but I'm going to say no to your application. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. Next, I have Judy.
Thank you, Abraham. I'd like to make a resolution, and if it's seconded, I'd like to speak to it afterwards. My resolution is to approve this corporate change that they've come to us with. And I'd like to put some warehouses, or however you write it, Abraham, that providing that they put up a gate this week, and we certainly should know before it's voted on, before the full board next week, whether the gate is up or not. I'm sure they'll let the board office, Jeremy will let the board office know, providing they put up a gate, providing that they clean up on all 3 sides of the enclosure, which they said they've been doing, but I think that should be in our resolution. Providing that Jeremy or whoever gives a phone number for neighbors to reach out, and providing that they look into turning off the electric when the outdoor shed isn't in use. I think Barbara had her hand up to second it.
You have a couple of seconds on that one. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay, so Jeremy, did you say before that you've seen these gates up on other enclosures?
Thank you, Judy. Yes, we have. And in fact, we saw a few of them locally that didn't look great. I'll be honest, they looked pretty cheap. So we went out and purchased a more industrial.
Whether it's legal or not legal, according to Marco, if other people are doing it and this will be good for the neighbors, then I'm in favor of doing what's good for the neighbors. And this sounds like it will be. And I just want to say, as also a resident of 64th Street, that we've eaten in JoJo's over the years. It has wonderful food. I would hate to see it go out of business. The merchants have been having a hard enough time as it is. And I think to vote down a corporate change because of a shed that they're trying to take care of, and they're trying to take care of the homeless, all the merchants seem to have these various problems. I don't think it's fair to take it out on JoJo's. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Judy. Addison?
Hi, so I was going to make basically the exact same resolution. So I'm going to call a question on it.
Great. Do we have a second on that calling of the question? Barbara? Great. Okay, so we have the question called, someone opposed calling the question? Okay, so in summary, this is going to be a motion to approve based on Judy's motion. We approve the corporate change with the, I'm going to call them stipulations, that the establishment clean the enclosure on all three sides, that they do install the gate this week as they have committed to and expressed to us here today, this evening, that they do provide us a direct contact number, whether it's to Jeremy or someone that can directly and immediately resolve any issues, and then also to look in the feasibility of shutting off the electricity to further make the structure less attractive to anyone who might want to enter or reside there. Jeremy, does that all sound like things you would agree to?
Yes, they do.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to go for the roll. So there's a motion to approve. If anyone's voting no, not voting for cause, or abstaining, please let me know. Otherwise, you will go down as a yes. Okay, so for this one, Marco, I have your hand.
Yes, my answer is no.
Okay, thank you, Marco. Anyone else? Okay, so just in terms of the tally, we had 12 to start, but looks like we lost Lindsay, but we have gained Mohit. Mohit, since you just joined, and I don't know if you caught the entirety of the discussion on this application, would you like to partake, or would you like to? Thumbs up as a partake. Okay.
Yeah, I support. I listen to the whole conversation.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. So. So then I have this tally as 11 yes, 1 no. So it will go as an approval to the full board based on that vote. So thank you very much, Jeremy and Martin, for your time and for your working with us. And as always, to yourselves and to the members of the public, we try to come to a sensible resolution here. But as always, if things do not go as planned, or there's further discussion, you can always reach out to us, and we will continue to play an active role here. So thank you, everyone, for your.
On behalf of JoJo's, I'd like to thank the committee, and I wish everybody a happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Likewise.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great.
Okay, great. Next up, do I have the representative for item 2B? This is the Comic Strip Live, also a corporate change application.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You're frozen.
We can hear you.
Oh, I can hear you now. Okay.
Good. Hi. Tell us your name and just tell us a bit about the application.
My name is Jean Tinkin. I own the comic strip. We applied for a change in the name the liquor license is under. My husband passed away. We've had the club for 46 years, almost 47. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you very much, and our condolences.
Thank you.
Okay, then first I'm going to see if there's any members of the public on this application. Seeing none, I'll go to cause.
Yeah, I have one request, and I guess it applies to everybody. I've walked up and down that avenue many times, and when there's a crowd, I have to walk in the street, or I have to ask people to move. Is that possible to have somebody basically keep part of the sidewalk clean or clear for pedestrians?
I just ordered a red rope for precisely that purpose.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, cause. Marco?
Thank you. I would like to put a motion. The motion is to approve as presented. Thank
Great. I see several seconds on that. Okay. Okay. Suggest we call the question. Does anyone oppose calling the question? Assuming not. Okay. Seeing none, in that case, we'll go to the roll. This is a motion to approve the corporate change. If anyone's voting no, not voting for cause or abstaining, please give me an indication. Otherwise, it will be voted as a yes. Seeing none, this goes as a unanimous 12-0 approval. So thank you very much for your time. Good evening and wishing you a happy new year.
Thank you, guys.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, moving along. Do I have a representative for item 2C, the Jewish Museum and 4th on 5th LLC? Hi, I see Cindy Fan.
Hi, thank you, Chair Salcedo. I am Cindy Kaplan, the Chief Legal Counsel at the Jewish Museum.
Welcome.
Happy New Year to everyone. I think this is a pretty straightforward administrative application to change the corporate office, the corporate officers. 2 of the 4 corporate officers that were listed on our current application work for our restaurant partner, which unfortunately decided not to reopen after the pandemic. And the other 2 corporate officers who were listed have both retired from the museum. So, we need to move forward in compliance with the regulations and list new corporate officers. The museum is also seeking a late renewal application, which lapsed during the pandemic. We don't have any plans right now to reopen the restaurant. So our plan is basically to get it, this late renewal done and then to put it into safekeeping. Hopefully at some point in the future, we will find a new partner and we'll revisit the issue then. The museum is also filing a separate endorsement application to eliminate the former restaurant provider from our current license. So.
Right. Thank you very much for that summary. Okay, just to be transparent, do we have any members of the public with questions or comments on this application? Members of the public? Seeing none, go to Marco first.
Thank you, Abraham. I would like to put a motion. The motion is to approve as presented. Is anybody second? Second. Thank you.
Seconding, Bill. Great. Okay. So I'd say we call the question. Does anyone oppose calling the question? Seeing none, then we will just, okay, good. Then I'll go to the roll. So there's a motion to approve as presented. If anyone's voting no, not voting for cause or abstaining, give me an indication. Oh, Rebecca, hello.
Hi, I'd like to not be counted for this vote because I just joined.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Great. Okay, so with that tally, I see no no's, no abstaining, or no not voting for cause. I'm going to keep Rebecca off this one. So that will be a 12-0 approval as presented. So thank you very much for your time and appearing. Have a happy new year and a good evening.
Thank you. Same to all of you.
Thanks. Okay, great. So that concludes the streetlight portion of this meeting, unless there's any old or new business relating to streetlight that anyone has. If not, then we will move to item 3, which is a joint discussion excuse me, with the Health, Seniors, and Social Services Committee. So with that, I also want to acknowledge Barbara and Rebecca as the co-chairs of that committee for this discussion, which is a follow-up from last month's discussion of the cannabis licensing and the new rules laid out by the Office of Cannabis Management. So we want to continue that discussion. There is a comment period still open with respect to those regulations. The final date to submit comments on that is, I believe, February 13th. I think that's what we had agreed or noted. So I want to continue that discussion so that we're able to come up with a resolution or resolutions to submit our input with respect to those regulations. And as a recap, last month, we did pass a resolution, which was to the state and city requesting that immediate identification of an agency to help resolve the illegal storefronts and establishments selling cannabis and or edibles. Okay, so with that, Barbara or Rebecca, do you want to supplement in any way? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, also
There you
Mohit is the one that has been so helpful to me. I've met with him and so knowledgeable. So if he could be there too. I'd like to just, because I thought there was some confusion. There's three aspects to this. One is the current situation, and that was the resolution we have. We had that resolution before there was one legal store. There's now literally one legal store in 8th and Broadway. And it was the fact that there are so many illegal stores that we wanted it to. Then we have what's now legal called the CAURD, C-A-U-R-D. And Mohit, please interrupt me. You know much more than I do. And they are the ones where the licenses have been given out and one store has actually opened up. One of the questions that maybe Mohit knows the answer is, will we have any say about any of those stores that come to our area? These are the licenses that will be going to people that were previously incarcerated because of the drug laws or nonprofits or specific things like that. The third type.
Robert, you want me to come in on the card licenses?
Can I just, and maybe let me say the third one and then you can answer. The third one
Sure
will
thing.
be the regular ones, which I think is what, if I believe that's what we're mainly going to be talking about in the future. They're not there. So if you would, yes, please do.
Perfect. I think you've nailed it. And unfortunately, I don't have clarity on the role of the CB8 in terms of the citing of card licensees either. I have reached out to some folks who may know over at OCM and hope to have something to report back in time for the board meeting. But in terms of the framework we just laid out, I think you're absolutely right. Our primary conversation here is going to be around the citing of the regular licenses, which is starting to will come up in the next 4 to 6 months or so. And the regulations that were issued, specifically section 119 of the draft regulations that were issued, concern the role of the CB8 on citing these new retail licenses. So, I'm happy to talk more about that and you kind of lead off from there. But Rebecca or anyone else, we have something to add before we go to.
Can I just ask something?
Yeah,
what
go
I
ahead.
heard when the one card license that's actually opened up, which is not WeWorks, whatever it's called, something where Housing Works is running it. They said over and over that community board was all for it, that the elected. Are you? I don't know. I had an ear infection. I'm deaf in one ear, so I don't know if it's me or whether your audio is not right. I missed some of this.
I've got some background noise here, so you might be hearing that, but I'm not. I wasn't talking.
Like horrible ear that's driving me nuts. It's nothing like a stuffed ear for a couple of weeks. Do you feel we will have no say with the card? Those, if any of the card licensees come to our area?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speculate. What the lay of the land, as I understand it, is as follows, which is initially the state had indicated that card licensees would use facilities that were procured through DASME. I forget what it stands for, but it's a state real estate.
It's the dormitory
entity. Yeah, it's a dormitory authority, but it's a real estate entity essentially. And they were supposed to go ahead and procure locations. And in the last few weeks, they've actually come out and said that that's no longer the case, and that licensees can use some DASME locations, but that DASME is not going to be the only one, and people can go out and find their own space. And so, I said I wouldn't speculate, but if I were to speculate, I would say that if it's a DASME location, then hopefully a card licensee comes to us, just to get community input. But if it's not a DASME location, if it's a location that someone has found on their own, then presumably that would be a situation where they wouldn't come to us in accordance with the new regulations. And then just one last thing on card licenses. There was an update from the state saying that card licensees would be allowed to start what's called a micro delivery service. So basically, they can have a small store, in the Upper East 16, Getter, some of these other small delivery stores. So they can start a small store for delivery only for up to 12 months while waiting on everything to get settled on their primary retail location. And so ideally, those locations, those little mini delivery stores will also come into us. So Just to kind of lay it out for the members here from the public and the board. So, in the Upper East, my expectation is that we'll have some number of retail locations, but also potentially a few of these delivery locations. And then there's something coming down the line called on-site consumption or social consumption. That's not in the cards for the next couple of years, but that's another type of license.
Is the social consumption, we talked about having maybe diners selling, is that what you mean? Selling?
Yeah, exactly. So it would be, the law says that they can't also sell alcohol, but yes, exactly. You're lucky. You would imagine that there is, someone selling, having a lounge where you can consume cannabis products or smoke it or something, and then also have maybe a comedy show or something. So you can imagine something like that might get set up as well on the Upper East. So it is contemplated in the law, but the regulations have not been issued.
Okay. You're okay where you are. It sounds pretty.
I'm just complaining. No, I'm fine. I'm in Newark. All things considered, I'm in a pretty good spot.
Okay.
Good. Well, thank you for answering those kind of initial questions, but I know we also had a presentation that you wanted to walk us through to provide kind of also suggest some potential resolutions.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Thank you, Abraham. And so, Robert, if you could pull those up, the slides up. We may want to go to, it's towards the end where it says draft resolution 1. And so then, perhaps the right way for me to do this would be to introduce a resolution and then speak to it if seconded. And then we can start with draft resolution 1. And
okay, we see it.
Perfect. Okay, so this is actually a two-pager. So there's a lot here. And so what draft resolution 1 says is this would be the substance of the comment that the community board would send to the Office of Cannabis Management before February 13th. So we'd be on the record asking for certain changes to the draft regulation. And the changes would be as follows. So, I'm just on a call. Okay. So the first issue here would be that the OCM shall have a point person to communicate with the community boards. That's not something that we've done before. It's something that could help us going down the line. The second issue is the second issue is the card issue that we just discussed. That card licensees should submit to community board review. The third issue is that the draft regulations stipulate a 30-day review period. I believe it's 30 days, maybe 45. But my suggestion in this resolution is that we extend that to 60. The fourth issue is that, and I'll go into this in more detail, but that there are various distances in the draft regulations for how far or how close a retailer can be to certain facilities. And I'll talk through some suggestions on how we may want to amend those. Next slide, please, Robert. Okay, there's some more here. In the notification that comes to the community board when a licensee asks for community board review, that notification should include certain additional materials. The form that is in the draft regulation is kind of a one-pager and is very high level. There's something in the draft regulation about not imposing fees on cannabis licensees, and if we want cannabis licensees to advertise that they are coming in front of us, so that the members of the public can learn about it, and want to make sure that is not something that will be afoul of the draft regs. The next one here is offer some real clarity on what we can and cannot do in terms of stipulating limitations on signage. And other states and municipalities have limitations in regard to the use of paint, in regards to the use of the words, cannabis, weed, hemp, et cetera. And so what can we do or not do when it comes to the community board in terms of signage? There's an exemption in the draft regs around what we can and cannot do around historical districts, and essentially you're allowed to be more strict in a historical district. And so the question then is, how much more strict and what exactly are the flexibilities there? Second to last, that the draft reg require that certain data be collected and then reported back to the community board. And then the last item is that if there are stipulations agreed to, that those stipulations be enforceable through the OCM. Okay, I'm gonna have to take a couple minute break just to get moving, but that's the draft reg. If there's a second, maybe we can start the conversation before I go into the rest of the slides.
I'm happy to second that, and I'm happy to also start the conversation on this and see if people have questions, comments, supplements on this. I think this provides a comprehensive, tally of some of the things we had discussed last time, and even that we've just kind of contemplated on our own. So there's a very good reflection here. All right, so first, Addison.
Sorry, I apologize about this, but can we quickly clarify some of the acronyms and I know I looked up OCM is Office of Cannabis Management, and then CARD seems to be a subset of that. Can we just sort of clarify what each of these agencies are?
Sure. So the Office of Cannabis Management is the agency that is tasked with issuing the cannabis license and also the regulations that go with, well, the state issues the license, but is the agency charged with that, and also with the regulations and basically running the whole cannabis program for the state. CARD licenses are CAUD are a type of license. Those are licenses that have been presented and given to individuals who at some point had some kind of prosecution against them regards to whether it was cannabis possession or some kind of the criminalization of cannabis back when it was criminalized, and in an effort to ameliorate some of that, they were allowed to be allowed to have licenses to sell marijuana and cannabis. So those are the set of licenses. There's the CARD license specific to those individuals and those applications, and then there's going to be regular CARD licenses which will be open to individuals that don't fall under that category. Does that help, Addison?
Sorry, yes, thank you so much. Okay. And I'm sorry, I know this is something I could have Googled, but I think this was helpful to hear it out.
Not a problem. Robert, looks like Mohit is back, so you can keep him unmuted as he's our resident expert, so he can chime in also on any of the questions. And then I will go to Marco.
Just quickly there, Abraham, before we go to Marco. I think slide 2 is actually exactly this question on what the different acronyms mean. So perhaps, Robert, if you could just pull up that slide for everyone. There we go. And so let me just go through this then before we go to Marco. That's okay. So OCM and CARD is exactly as Abraham described. MRTA, the MRTA, is the name of the overarching law that was enacted a couple of years ago now. Yeah, a couple of years ago now. The OCM is the state agency that reports to a board called the CCB. So that structure is very similar to how the liquor world is kind of set. There's the ABC, I think it's called, that reports to the Liquor Commission here in New York. And then a couple things here. So I mentioned at the bottom, the different types of facilities that we may anticipate opening here in the East. And so those are 4 different types. And cultivator is unlikely to be a major cultivator operation, just given the cost of real estate in the area. But you might imagine some kind of small micro cultivator. So don't want to exclude them from this conversation. And then lastly, a provisional license. So the process here is that there is a you initially go to OCM with an application, and if approved for one of these applications, for one of these license types, you're granted a provisional license, which gives you a 12-month period to then go out and procure a location, business plan or whatever else the state requires to convert from a provisional to a full license. And so the community board review is part of what you have to go through to convert your provisional license to a full license. And so just wanted to make that clear. Okay, enough for me on this.
Marco.
Thank you. Mohit, I think your microphone, I think, is running very, very poor. Hard to understand what you has been saying. But above all of that, I had to thank you. I think it's a very good effort that you did. I think, yes, I will support this motion, and I think it's a very good idea. However, what I found that is when you cannabis, the selling of cannabis is not only in the stores, it's also on the street vendors. The street vendor, there is a truck that's selling everywhere. And that's basically going to go in conflict with your regulations that you are proposing. And I think it's a very good idea, but I think you will find a lot of challenges in that direction. But I love that. I would like that in the way that you present it should be also for the street vendors, because it's more likely the trucks, they will be running all over the city, especially some specific neighborhood. And I think I saw in 86th Street one of these trucks, and that part is not part of this resolution, and it should be in that direction. And thank you so much for your work. And I think in general terms, a very well done document. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Marco. And apologies for the audio. I just tried to push my headphones in more, so hopefully you can hear me better. I will also try speaking up. So the street vendors that you mentioned are unlicensed retailers, and so they are just not supposed to exist. And the substance and the rationale behind the resolution that the community board adopted last month was around trying to reduce or remove unlicensed retailers, just including these street vendors. And the regulations that the state has drafted are specific to brick and mortar retailers, because there is nothing in the law that allows for street vendors or food truck style vendors or anything like that. So so my comments are specific to kind of the vision of the law, and in terms of enforcing the prohibition, that was the resolution that was passed last month.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, next I have Russell.
Thank you. So I have some questions about the resolution. So the where we say clarify what types of limitations on signage are allowable, the idea there is that the community board, I guess, can, if it wants to, although we're not necessarily saying that we would, can impose some sort of limitation on what kinds of signage would be permissible within our district, and impose that in the course of the review process. Is that what we're asking for?
Yeah, and it's a great question. The regulation is really doesn't say anything about what our it's hard for me to say like where our advisory authority ends, and whether or not there's an explicit authority or that we have. And the regulation says that there is some that the community board can require that there be like restrictions on signage and other types of restrictions, parking, etc. And there's a word that's used that that such restrictions not make the entity commercially unviable. But is that a stipulation that we can enforce, or is that an actual? If we say no, if we ask for those stipulations and the licensee says no, then is that application denied? So that I'm actually not clear about that distinction.
Yeah, I mean, it would work. I think my understanding is it would work like other, the way that other stipulations do. I mean, essentially, I think if it seems like what we're describing is something almost along the lines of like the sort of standard affidavit that we have in terms of like a standardized sort of essentially policy statement by us where we say this is the kind of thing that we expect all of our and ask of all applicants, and we won't approve of, you know, an application unless it does that. So I imagine if we came up with some sort of blanket rule of that type regarding the kinds of signs that we wouldn't want to see, that's effectively what it would be.
I agree with that, and I just don't know then what the OCM would do with a situation
Okay, yeah.
where, you know, where we say no because they don't agree with the application.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood what we're essentially what we're saying with that portion of it, because I mean, I'm sort of, I don't think it makes sense for us in this resolution to say specifically that we want the OCM to incorporate, you know, in particular, any of these sort of potential prohibitions. But I think it makes sense to sort of tell them that we want them to allow us to incorporate this kind of thing if we decide that we want to. And I take it that that's what we're saying. And then the other one I wanted to ask about is, I guess two others. Okay, so for the one with the historic district, I mean, I would say we may want to be more specific there, because I think we don't necessarily just want a clarification, but, you know, I think we would want to specify that there needs to be, I mean, it's probably already would be required, I would think, but I mean, I think if you're going to be in a historic district, you know, whatever kinds of restrictions or regulations would apply to signs within a historic district, including the need to get Landmark Preservation Commission approval or whatever. I mean, I think we want all that stuff to still apply. So I mean, I would say maybe even just be more specific in that regard. That's a suggestion. So I don't know if it'll be adopted as a friendly amendment. Great, and people can say what they think about that.
I can accept that also. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And then the last thing is the requirements for the facility to collect certain data over time. That I'm a little hesitant about, because I actually think this is not stuff that's easy for a small business to collect. I mean, I don't know how, you know, like a small business is going to be able to sort of collect, you know, on a sort of ongoing, regular basis, parking information, you know, noise reading. I mean, odor is very difficult, you know, traffic. I mean, all that kind of stuff I think is very, is pretty tough, I think, as a practical matter for a small business to do. So, I mean, I think the better thing to do, and I mean, you know, I don't know, I think this is already provided for. I mean, basically, I think generally with small businesses and whatever, you know, there's a requirement that they not, you know, cause excessive noise, or that they not cause excessive odor or whatever. And I think just sort of saying that that's what we expect, and you know, leaving it up to them to do that, and you know, OCM or whoever else to enforce that, you know, I think that's better than requiring them to collect all of this information. And I mean, you know, frankly, I'm not sure what we would really do, you know, if we were getting regular reports on all these different categories from these things. I mean, I think administratively that's tough for us also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point. It was written, you know, very broadly. The piece of data that I think would interest the community board is just some kind of process or just busyness, and I don't know how to look exactly to strategy. I don't know the number of sales or number of people walking in the door or something that they have easily available. My understanding in New York is that most retailers will have to pay something called the CP sales system, which is a data tracking system that tracks sales numbers and moving through production, you know, retail process. And so perhaps you know, the data requirements should be a more minimal requirement, where something can just be kind of transcribed out of the existing data system, as opposed to being able to make a request for data. But I'm looking forward to a situation where, you know, there's a concern about foot traffic or traffic traffic, and whether or not there's enough capacity to stay clear from a specific retailer, given the amount of demand they might be handling. And I just wanted to be able to say that we have something to look at before having to react to any situation like that. So that's where that came from, but I understand what you're saying. I'm happy to kind of get a sense of the moving on before we move that section of the
It's tough for me to hear you, and I think it may. I don't know if others are having the same issue, but
yeah, Mohit, unfortunately, you're at the connection has gotten worse, so it's a lot harder to hear you at the moment.
But I mean, I understood you basically. It sounds like you want us to sort of address those issues, and you're kind of flexible in terms of how we go about it. Which
yes, that's exactly right. And I will be out of the airport in a couple minutes. Oh, more like 4. So I may just mute myself in 4 minutes and come back online when it's quiet.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, my preference there, just to so then in that case, I mean, this Mohit can say whether he accepts this or not. When he's back able to speak again, is just is to sort of replace the requirements to be collected and instead say that we want we want the OCM to impose reasonable limitations with regard to noise and odor. And I'm not even sure I would include parking and traffic, but yeah, I would say, noise and odor.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
I have 2 comments. First of all, I think it was very general about sort of like saying it's the same thing as the SLA requirements about where to put it. I wonder if there's a few more that we would want. I don't know, the SLA, can you have a bar near, for instance, a safe haven or a shelter or something like that?
There's no specific limitation. I'm aware of the limitations were specific to places of worship, schools, etc.
I wonder if we should look at the SLA maybe separately and say, are there some that we may want to add because there are some differences? Then the second question, we had started getting a list of wish lists. I love these resolutions, but in addition, should we have just a general list that we hand in of things we want? As an example, I know I talked to Mohit about this, and we brought this up last time. What responsibility should a landlord have? And the issue that Mohit, I don't know if he's still on, has said is even the general general licenses that will be given later, they will be conditional for, I think it's a year. So should we say, and they may not, they have to get a license before they get a location. Should we say that a retailer may not will be fined or something like that if they do rent to an establishment that doesn't have a temporary license?
Barbara, I think that's covered. Mohit has 2 resolutions. So in resolution 2, which we'll get to, speaks to kind of fines on landlords.
Okay. Oh, he did have it. I thought so. I thought I saw it and I didn't see it.
Yeah.
We had talked about that a lot.
Okay. But with you, and when hopefully he comes back, but either way, I think one of the other things that I think would be a good supplement to this, even though we talked about enforcement and we sent the resolution last month, I think it would be worthwhile to reiterate, that in order, and specifically with the card licenses, their effectiveness and success depends on them operating, being the exclusive legal operators. Absolutely. And having these illegal establishments, undercuts that program as a whole. So I would like to see something in here that whether it's reiterating or not, right, talking about having enforcement. And
I gather something I said last time, that it is the sheriff that's doing it on the city level. It is the sheriff that has probably made the smallest dent, but has been closing some illegal. Yeah. And I think we do want it on the city level. Do you agree with me, rather than on the state?
Again, I don't necessarily want to, and I think that was kind of the conversation last time. I don't want to tell the OCM how to do it. I just want them to do it and figure out whether it's going to be a local agency or otherwise. But just to figure it out.
I'm not sure it's OCM that will determine. I don't know who told the sheriffs to close down the stores. I don't think it's OCM. I think it's local.
Well, in some of the literature that articles that I saw, that there was some collaboration with OCM and some of the local agencies to help with the program. So ultimately, OCM is responsible. So I would think so. But you know, go ahead, Rebecca.
I agree on, and maybe not specifying which agency. I think, as we heard over the course of the other meetings, the big problem was no one felt they had the authority, so nobody was doing it. We just need them to tell whoever they want to tell that they have the authority to regulate what's going on.
We right now we do know who that is, and it's the sheriff.
Okay, good. So while we wait for Mohi to come back, I do see a member of the public hand, so I will go to Boaz.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the time to talk. So from what I understand, the city gave a few licenses, the state gave a few licenses to people with marijuana conviction in the past, meaning that the past they were arrested because of marijuana related crime, and they got the license now. So what we have right now in Upper East Side, we have many stores that are selling marijuana weed related products. When you go to those stores and you talk with those guys, you understand that they feel that they have an incentive to do that. They say that the original people that got the license passed the law. The city, everyone understands it's a BS law, so they are passing the law as well. So we have those stores that are right now selling, forget about what you guys are writing in the PowerPoint, they sell the product out there. The second thing, you have drug dealers, people in the street next to Rupert Park that are pushing the weed. So I don't have any problem. Whoever wants to buy it. It's entire market. It's good for the city that they will get the tax and so on. What I want, the only thing that I want is that if we can, I have a problem with the fume. So if, for example, in my apartment, if someone smoke even downstairs, I get the fume of the weed. For me, it's not a big deal, but for my newborn baby, it's a big issue. So I don't know what can we do with that about that. But the only thing that I want that you guys will add into this 10 pages of presentation, I'm using an app that is called 311. I'll tell you exactly the NYC 311. You familiar with this app?
Yes.
It's the app that you can report. And you can report everything over there. You can report about snow ice on the sidewalks. You can report about illegal dumping. You can report about park condition, food establishment complaint, and so on. I would like to be able to report on a vendor that is selling weed that is not supposed to sell weed. Who is going to handle it behind the scene? You guys can say it with hundreds of sessions, get the small details. But I want to have a button over here that I can say, okay, this store is selling and they're not supposed to sell. And that's my ask. Thank you again. I hope it makes sense. And again, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Boaz. Just one, and maybe Robert, if we can put it in the chat, there already is, and this is relatively recent guidance from the Office of Cannabis Management, that they've set up an email for suspected violations that can be sent to the Office of Cannabis Management for this purpose. So if there's any establishment that anyone believes is operating illegally, they can go. I'm going to type it into you, Robert, and then maybe you can share it with everyone here. It's complaints@ocm.ny.gov. So that's what they've set up right now. Hopefully it'll get expanded so that it goes to 311. But yeah, that's the most recent that I've seen. Sorry, Robert, I misspelled that. That they have now issued guidance for the ability for anyone to be able to, whether it's suspected violation or complaints regards to any illegal activity, location. They ask that you provide pictures if possible, as much detail, so that way they can send enforcement and be able to address the issue. Great, thank you very much, and appreciate that input, Boaz. Okay, I believe Mohit is back.
Hey,
hi, welcome
apologies
back.
again for the background noise. But yes, I'm back, and Boaz, I think that's a great idea on the 311 app. So
good.
However we can push that idea forward is fantastic.
Mo, one of the I don't know if you were able to hear while we were away. One of the thoughts that we had was to reiterate a request or requirement regarding enforcement into the draft resolution 1. I know we've spoken to that previously, but I think it's worth reiterating that we want OCM to continue to really have an emphasis on the enforcement, and particularly with regards to the card program, because the whole point of the card program is to allow the individuals holding those licenses to succeed, and these illegal establishments are effectively undercutting that program. And while they're already taking steps, the OCM is, I think it'll be worthwhile to reiterate our strong support for continued and effective enforcement. Okay,
yeah, I mean, that could be a part A to the resolution, and then part B could be the rest of it, or something along those lines. That's fine. That's a reasonable thing.
Okay, good. Barbara, you had mentioned something. Did I miss something before we talked about enforcement?
We were talking about landlords, but are we going to look at the second?
That'll be resolution 2. So let's conclude or continue with this draft.
Yeah. Okay. So just to finish off resolution 1, I had 2 remaining slides that are actually pretty quick.
Okay, good.
Abraham,
and then after that,
I'll go through those.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish those up, and then we can. I see a couple more hands on this.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah. So slide 3. Okay, so this was an overview of the draft regs for everyone's awareness. And whenever the regs in municipalities, my understanding, need to stop there. So municipalities may no longer ban the sale of cannabis in their communities. There was a time when they could, when the bill was first passed, but no longer. And as I had mentioned, municipalities may not impose fees on cannabis retailers or businesses. And municipalities may not restrict opening hours to less than 70 hours per week. And so the phrase municipalities here also encompasses community boards. And so there's something in the reg saying that community boards serve as a municipal entity when it comes to New York City. So this applies to us as well. And then in the second half of the slide, what we may do is prohibit retail or on-site consumption within 1,000 feet of another similar location. So that's similar to a similar reg on the liquor side of the house. And we may regulate the time, place, and manner, but not be unreasonably impractical. That's the phrase I was thinking of earlier, Russell. And specifically, this includes restrictions on parking, traffic control, odor, noise, and distance to community facilities. So those are all phrases mentioned in the regulation. Community facilities is something that we can define as a municipality. I'm not sure if that is the community board or the city. I'm looking for clarity on that. But once we have defined a set of community facilities, then there's a specific distance requirement that comes in where businesses cannot open from a certain distance of community facilities. Okay, next slide, Robert. Okay, so this is the last slide. And so, a chunk of the regs are really about, the distances between certain things. And so no retail or on-site consumption facilities. This is not, for example, a micro delivery site. This is not a cultivator. This is specific to those 2 types of licenses. So for those 2 types of licenses, they cannot be within 200 feet of a house of worship on the same road, right? So you can be, on the other side of the block, but it's not on the same road. And it cannot be within 500 feet of a school, again, along the same road, or within 500 feet of a community facility that I had just mentioned. And then lastly, 1,000 feet of a similar facility. And that last one is a radius. right? So that is not just along the same road, it is a radius. So, and so, one suggestion I had in the resolution was that, to suggest to OCM that they allow for, these two types of measurements, one being along the same street, maybe 500 feet along the same street, but then maybe also a 200-foot radius measure, so that there's some, so that we have, some distance between these things and between schools and facilities, for example. So that's all. That was the rest of my presentation. So hopefully the resolution makes sense, and I accept the friendly amendment that that Russell has suggested.
Great, and also the amendment, Barbara.
Yes,
yes. Adding enforcement. Okay, good.
There we go.
Okay, I see one more hand, Marco, and that'll be hopefully it for this resolution, and then we can move on to the next one.
Oh, thank you. The only thing I'm going to comment is about what Russell was saying. What we have to say is probably all zoning regulations and landmark shall apply in all signage. And that's it. It's very simple, straightforward. We have already the regulation set over there.
Okay, that sounds consistent with what was said. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Okay, so with that, does anyone want to call the question on this draft resolution with the amendments? Okay, I see a thumbs up from Marco and a hand from Barbara. Great. Is anyone opposed to calling the question? Okay, seeing none, then I will go to the roll. And so this is a motion to approve draft resolution 1 as presented with the friendly amendments. If anyone's voting no, not voting for cause or abstaining, raise your hand. Mrs. Brown? Oh, okay, no. Okay, voting no, not voting for cause or abstaining. Okay, seeing none, then this will go as a unanimous approval. Let me just check I have the right count. I now have 11 people, so who did I lose? So for this one, me, Rebecca, Barbara, Marco, Madison, Bill, Judy, Mohan, Mrs. Brown, Robin, and Austin. Okay, so that's, I have 11 down for that resolution 1. So 11-0, yes, unanimous. Rebecca.
I think we lost 2 people because the last vote I was present but didn't count for the 12.
Yes, that's right.
Just so you can double check.
Yep, no, that tallies. Okay, good. Thank you very much. So then we already touched on it, but let's move to the slide for draft resolution number 2, which we also discussed at our last meeting. But Mohit, do you want to walk through this one?
Yes, happy to. So this one's much easier. Draft resolution 2. So let me make a resolution and then speak to it if seconded. Be it resolved that the city or the state shall impose significant fines on landlords who enter into leases with cannabis establishments that do not have a provisional, full, or card license from OCS.
Okay. Perfect.
Yep. Good. Well, I think you have a second here. So if you want to speak to it further, feel free.
Sure. I mean, this is very straightforward, and we've already talked about it. But the core here is that there are a number of illicit cannabis retailers in our community, and the landlords should know better and should not be leasing out their spaces for those facilities. So the state needs to go ahead and start shutting them down, but at the same time, there should be a broader review of trying to disincentivize something like this from happening again in the future.
Good.
And just one last comment there. There was a good article in the Times a couple of weeks ago about how certain states have just really not been able to fully establish their legal markets because of the continued presence of unlicensed cannabis retailers. And so, that is the concern that we're trying to head off here in New York.
Yeah. Okay, Marco.
Thank you. The only thing I'm gonna say, I'm gonna support this application. I think whatever we can do is better than do nothing. And I think I don't think it's gonna work because, first of all, if now depends what kind of business is. If it's within group 6, or it's in group 6, the landlord, he has, as long as it's in commercial space, he has the right to lease to whatever they want. And the problem is there is nothing in the zoning resolution that tells cannabis is in group 6, group 10, group 12, and that probably would be very helpful to establish. Otherwise, I don't think it's going to work, but I'm going to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Okay, any other hands, questions on this one? If not, then if anyone wants to make a motion to call the question.
Call the question.
Great, thank you. Seconds, good, I'm seeing several seconds. Okay, is anyone opposed to calling the question? Okay, seeing none, in that case, I'll go to the roll. So this is a motion to approve draft resolution 2 as presented. If you're voting no, not voting for cause or abstaining, please give me a sign. Otherwise, this will go down as a yes. Okay, seeing none, that's going to go down as an 11-0 approval. Great. Okay, so I guess we can stop sharing the screen now. Is there any other old business, new business? If not, then I will. Oh, yes, go ahead, Barbara.
What do we do now? Does this go? I know the borough president said that they were accumulating from the different community boards. So maybe Russell could answer this question. The next step would to send these resolutions on.
Well, I think from what we said last time, we're going to present these to the full board. So,
yeah, assuming that it passes the full board, sure.
Correct, yeah. But Russell, you can unmute Russell, Robert.
And does anybody know? I don't know if Mahit knows. I don't know the answer. Is there going to be like a public place where we, can give a statement, go down and give a statement and read our resolutions, or we just hand it in?
The last I saw, it was just an email address where to submit comments, but Mohit, I don't know if you've seen anything further on that.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Russell.
No, you go.
So 2 quick comments there. One is that this resolution is to allow the community board, through Russell, to submit comment into the regulatory process, so into the state register, I think it's called. And at that point in time, then the OCM has to review, all the comments submitted on the draft regulation, respond to them substantively, and if there are substantive issues that were raised, have to address them through redrafting the regulation. And so that is the process that is contemplated with this resolution. Whether or not there's a separate process that the borough president's office is leading, perhaps they are also submitting, their own, their own feedback into the register on the draft regulation. In which case, Russell might be able to say more about something that may be happening there. And then, in terms of a hearing, I'm not familiar enough with New York regulatory processes to know whether or not a hearing is required, but my suspicion is that a hearing could be held. I really don't know on whether or not there would be a hearing on the draft reg. And in some sense, there was a hearing because the CCB, the Cannabis Control Board, reviewed the reg and approved it at their November meeting. And so there was at least that public meeting that, of course, we were not at. But I don't know if there would be anything else.
Yeah, so that all aligns with my understanding. So I think basically I'm not aware of any sort of planned public hearings. So we're just going to be doing a written submission, and I think that the submission is essentially going to take the form of the resolution. So I don't think there's going to be more to it than that, although maybe there will be follow-up letters or whatever, if, you know, as the case may be. But essentially, if we're just talking about written comments being submitted, it's going to be the resolution that's going to be our comment. And again, if there were a public hearing or something, then I would, you know, I would plan to testify in that, and others could also. In terms of what the borough president is doing, I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. I mean, you know, the way borough board resolutions often work on issues like this is they'll write a sort of omnibus resolution that incorporates everybody's comments from all the boards that have done it. So they may be planning to do something similar. That would be my guess.
That's what was said at the borough president's leadership, that they're waiting. They got from one community board so far, I forget which one or two, something like that. And that they're waiting to hear from all the other community boards.
Yeah, so that's how they typically do it. They just basically add everybody's into the same one.
Okay.
I don't remember if there were, I think that was all the questions.
Yeah.
Great.
Good. Then I'll go to Mrs. Brown as I see two more hands up.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marco, did you have something before we honor that request? Yeah, go ahead, Marco, before we close.
Thank you. The only thing I'm going to say, why don't we can put this business should be in C2. If we are successful to obtain C2, this business, it won't be in our community. And I think we can ask, we don't lose anything. That will be my recommendation. I'm thinking a little bit more in terms of zoning. If we put it as this business should be in C2, we are fine. We're doing better. I think we can try it. If we are successful, fine. If not, I think that's the only idea. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Marco. I think so. I think would be helpful if maybe for the full board when this comes up, maybe if you can provide a little more detail, because I'm sure not everyone might be familiar with C2, and then we can maybe see if we can take that as a suggestion at that point.
Yeah, because our community is C1, almost everything. Everywhere is C1. C2 would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just, I mean, I guess we can talk about it, but I would just say, I mean, if the goal is to essentially find a sort of, you know, way to not have any of these things in our community district. I mean, I personally don't agree with that. And I think that's going to be a pretty tall order, both from the city and the state and potentially from the board. I mean, that's essentially what you're asking for. And you know, and arguably isn't even permitted by the regulations, which say that you're not allowed to forbid these things from opening in your city.
Right. All right, but worth contemplating. But thank you for that, Marco, and thank you, Russell. And then so Mrs. Brown, motion to adjourn. She was seconded by many hands. So with that, I will again wish everyone a good evening again, and thank you for joining, and Happy New Year once again.
Good.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.